Hello and welcome to another book review that I'm actually doing on location again. I'm still in France, and if you remember in my Heart of Darkness book review, I set the book of The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barberry as my next book. And I was reading this while I've been on holiday and I finished it, and I actually really want to talk about it and I really want to start my next book, but I feel like I want to get The Elegance of the Hedgehog out of my system before I begin my next book. Obviously this video will contain spoilers, so if you don't want that, please turn away. I will be talking about the particulars in the book as well as the big twist on the end. So like I said, that's what's going to be going on. Don't hate me for doing it, that's just what's going on in this video. I feel like there's a lot that could be said about this book, but I'm going to sort of try and take it in 3 sections, and as always would appreciate your input and your comments down below on the book as a whole, what I'm talking about, and any other notes that you have on it. But the 3 things I'm going to talk about is just kind of my impression of the book and the general style of it. The secondly would be the notion of the elegance of the hedgehog itself, and thirdly the twist at the end, before setting my book for the next one, which I'm going to start reading just now actually. And I feel sorry for my mum right now because she has decided to start reading the book as well. She's on she's 100 pages in right now, and I'm going to be spoiling it for her, but she said she didn't mind, so it's okay. So the kind of basics of the book is it was first written in French by Muriel Barberry, and then it was translated by Alison Anderson. It doesn't read as a translated work, unlike a couple of other books that I've read, so that's nice. There is some parts of it where I think that maybe if I was reading it in French you might get a better understanding of it, in particular the sort of different uses of languages, and I think maybe that would be a bit more apparent in French, and how language is used as a tool to separate the classes and make a distinction between the classes. And Renee, the concierge, is obviously using language and culture as a whole to cross the class boundaries in her apartment building. The book was written in 2006, however there is quite a timeless feel about it. It certainly doesn't feel like it was written in 2006 in the fact that it's dated now in 2016. In fact, there's quite an oldie feel about it in some ways, but I don't know if that's just a romantic notion of anything Parisian and French that I guess the Anglo world has. I'm maybe not as on point with French politics of 2006 to maybe get all the references. I do get some of them, but I was quite young in 2006 and certainly wasn't interested in French politics, although I was interested in normal politics. The style of the book is that it's written in sort of journal style and narrated by the concierge of an apartment called Renee, and it is her exploration of culture and of self, and just kind of detailing what goes on in the apartment. It is also interspersed with a journal written by one of the apartment residents, who is a 12-year-old girl who plans to commit suicide on her 13th birthday and is instead writing 2 kind of books to have her kind of great works before her death. There are her notes of profound thought, as well as I think it's called the Journal of Movement, about the movements she finds beautiful in the world. As a whole, the style does work and the structure works. I'd say that the first third or so is quite boring, really. It reminded me a little bit of Life of Pi in that respect, the kind of philosophical discussions and the grammar discussions. I feel like it was maybe a little bit indulgent in the first third for the author, and maybe that's just something that's been lost in translation, but I think it could have been a little bit slicker. The middle third and the final third were really good when we actually got some sort of characterization and character development from not just Renee and Paloma, who's the girl, but also the other residents in the building. For me, it started to get quite interesting about the chapter where they discussed the dogs and the dogs meeting in the apartment, and that is the first time I think that you really see the life of the apartment and how the people are maybe fitting into it. So I think from then onwards it got really good and I really enjoyed it. On the whole, I really enjoyed the book. I think it was quite a quick read, although there were some things that you had to spend a little bit more time just getting into the way of reading it. It was quite formally written, and like I said, I haven't read for pleasure in a while, so it was maybe a little bit more difficult to get into kind of that mode instead of just trying to extract academic meaning out of the text. It was to extract the kind of cultural stuff in the language as well. On to the second point of the whole notion of the elegance of the hedgehog. This is a concept that is discussed by Paloma, who's the young girl in the book, and it's a way of describing Renee, the concierge. She describes her as having the elegance of the hedgehog. So it's kind of spiky and tough on the exterior, but it has a kind of inner elegance and inner kind of culturedness, which she compares to a hedgehog. And I think this notion is really interesting, and I would like to see it developed further, particularly in relation to how Renee kind of interacts with the people that she does like in the buildings. One of them would be Olympe, who is the young girl who's training to be a vet in the book, and I think that she's a really interesting character, and how she gets on well with Renee is kind of skimmed over, so that would have been nice to be developed. The relationship with Paloma is well covered. However, I really wanted to learn a little bit more about Monsieur Uzu, who is a Japanese resident who moves into the building, and I think the development of their relationship, what they had in common, even though it kind of crossed over the different class lines, from knowing the kind of Blade Runner kind of pop culture references to high art and high culture. Moving on to my next book that I'm going to be looking at, and I'm actually going to start reading right now, is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. That is a big price sticker. I'm just going to take that off. I know a little bit about this book before I start reading it. I know that it was made into a film, and I have a vague idea of the plot, but I never saw the film, and I think there's a few other films and books of the same sort of nature, so I might be getting them confused. But it was published in 2012, and the tagline is "Wild, a journey from lost to found." I'll read you the blurb. At 26, Cheryl Strayed, that is the author's. This is either an autobiography or a semi-autobiography, which I didn't actually expect. It says, she thought she had lost everything. In the wake of her mother's rapid death from cancer, her family drifted apart and her marriage crumbled. With nothing left to lose, she made the most impulsive decision of her life, to walk 1,100 miles of the west coast of America, and to do it alone. She had no experience of long distance hiking, and the journey was nothing more than a line in a map, but it held a promise of piecing together a life that lay shattered at her feet. So let's go give this a read.